Welcome to the Profile Corner. In this video I thought I would share something kind of interesting. I've been subscribed to a number of woodworking magazines. In the mid-1980s to the mid-1990s, for instance, I was subscribed to roughly 6 different woodworking magazines. In the 2000s, I was probably also subscribed to 5 or 6 woodworking magazines. However, I started getting to be very busy at work, and I was having to read numerous large technical books right around the end of 2005. And at that point, I didn't have a whole lot of free time to read woodworking magazines, and so those woodworking magazines were just stacking up. I eventually whittled the subscription count down to 3, which included Fine Woodworking, Shop Notes, and also Popular Woodworking. After a couple more years went on, I dropped Popular Woodworking, thinking that the other 2 woodworking magazines might be interesting to me once I have free time to dedicate to reading those articles that are in the magazines. Unfortunately, today I still have many woodworking magazines that I've never read. And I got to thinking around November time of last year that it might be interesting to see if I can find digital archives of those magazines online, which may be easier to read because they have built-in indexes. So at that time, I purchased 4 different woodworking magazine libraries for roughly $100 each. I have 3 of those here with me. They came in a neat case that looks like it's designed for a CD, but if you open it up, there's actually a USB drive inside. So I bought the Fine Woodworking magazine library from 1975 through 2025. This didn't ship until sometime in December of last year. I also bought the Shop Notes because I found that this magazine was quite interesting in that it had a lot of tips for organizing your shop, and I desperately need that in certain places of my shop. And so I figured that getting an electronic version of these magazines would be helpful to me. And then I also bought Woodsmith, and as you may know, the Shop Notes magazine is no longer in production, and they've rolled that content into the Woodsmith magazine. And so now this is the only thing that gets delivered to me in addition to the Fine Woodworking magazine. In addition to that, I also picked up the digital library for Popular Woodworking. However, I didn't buy the USB version of that. I just bought the digital download version of it. And so I've got that on the computer here with me, and it's pretty neat how this works. You're able to copy the contents, which likely get downloaded as a virtual DVD drive, but you can copy the contents of that onto your desktop, and then you're able to easily browse through all the different magazines of all the different years quite easily. So if I see something here in, for instance, the 2021 Tools and Shop magazine, I can just click on it here, and it jumps right to that magazine, and now I'm able to browse through it just as if I had located that magazine on the bookshelf, and then I opened it up and brought it back over to the chair and started reading through it. The neat thing about this is that as my eyesight gets a little bit worse, it's helpful to be able to zoom in on text, and so that makes it a lot easier to read directly on the computer screen than it is directly in the magazine. Unfortunately, I'm getting quite a bit of reflection on the screen on the computer, so what I'll do is I'll continue this directly on the computer. I'll video record it on the computer, and then we'll wrap up the video that way. Once again, this is a Fine Woodworking magazine archive. Here this is showing the different issues. You can select by the decade if you so choose, or you can just scroll down through, and if you see something interesting on the cover, you can click on the magazine. For instance, if I want to go to the Tools and Shop issue, I can just click on it, and it opens up the PDF file. And once again, I'm able to zoom in to make it easier to read. And since this is a PDF file, I can just search for phrases inside this magazine just by holding down Control and pressing F. to search, and then I can type in a phrase such as lathe, and I found 25 matches for the word lathe. And now I can just page down through those entries until I find something that's interesting to read. Okay, and this is the one that I had opened up earlier. And obviously you can just scroll down through. If you're interested in reading something there, you can go to the page that says it's on page 28. If I click on that, it looks like it took me right to page 28. So they've got it nicely organized, at least in the Fine Woodworking magazine section. So let's close out these other tabs. We'll take a look at the shop notes. And it appears as though I had already done a search here. Let's go back. And here's all the different magazines organized by year. And once I find one that looks like it's interesting based on its cover, I can just click on it. And now I'm inside that magazine and I can zoom in on it to make it easier to read. And obviously I can do a Control F to search for a phrase inside this one issue. So that's handy. Let's go back and we'll take a look at one of the other features here. We can search through all the different magazines, and you've got your options here of searching either the full article text, which includes the title and the article summary, or just the title and the article summary. So this first option may be more useful for you. So if you're interested in finding information about a bowl gouge, now we can click on search, and here's all the matches. It found 4 different articles, apparently in 3 different issues, that have information about bowl gouges. So now we can click on, for instance, this one here, Turning a Bowl, and it said that it was on page 12. Here we can see that it was supposed to go to page 12. It doesn't seem like it always goes directly to the right page, and that may be dependent on the computer that you're using. But here's the article, and then you can then read it. And if you're not interested in that, you can go back to the index and you can click on a different one. So here's one on the Tormek sharpening station, which is similar to the sharpening station that I used in the last video. And you can read about that. And obviously if you're having difficulty reading it, you need larger text, you can just zoom in as necessary. So the Fine Woodworking also has that functionality where you can do searches of either just the article summary or the full text. So if we go to the full text here, type in bowl gouge and do a search, and now it says here that it found 46 articles. It's showing the first 20. Here's one from 1983, another one from 1976, 2025, 2024, 2024, 2023, 2021, and so on. Right on down through. And then if we're interested in seeing one of these, we can click on it. And it said that it was supposed to take us to page 18, but it didn't actually do that. So we can type in 18 right here, press enter, and there's the page. We can zoom in on it, and then we can scroll. Here's the article that it had found for us. Okay, so that's handy. We can also do that same thing with a Woodsmith magazine. Here it shows us all the different magazine covers going all the way back to the first issue, which was back in 1979. And if we're interested in looking at one of the first issues, let's go to March 1979, and we can click on that. And here you can read through all the different articles in that magazine. So here's one on making a box joint, contemporary chairs, a hanging lamp, raised panel doors. And surprisingly, you still see articles on these same topics in current magazines. And we just go back to the article index, and if we're interested in just looking at a certain decade, we can click on it here, 2010s. That works pretty nicely. Now let's go and we'll search through all the issues, and we want to search for full text. Search for bowl gouge. And there it found 5 articles on bowl gouges. So that's interesting that it's able to do that for you. It's a lot easier than scanning through the magazines by hand. It takes much less time to find something that's interesting for you to read. And interestingly, these old magazines do not have any advertisements in them, whereas today's Woodsmith magazine has all sorts of advertisements in it. That was one of the things that I really liked about the old Woodsmith magazine, and yet I always missed seeing the latest tool prices in those magazines. So here's the popular woodworking magazine, and it works pretty much the same way. Here's all the different issues from 2025, and you can keep scrolling down until you find something that's interesting. And once you find something that's interesting, you can click it to read the magazine. It appears as though they gave you a table of contents over at the side here, whereas we didn't see that with other magazines. We can zoom in, make it easier to read. And they also have the ability to search within all those different issues. The full article text will search for bowl gouge again. And here it found 26 articles dating all the way back to the first issue. So here's one from 2025. 2007. There's 2006. 1995. And that's the last one. We can click on that and we can read that. And then if we go to the page that was indicated there, it's supposed to be on page 66. We can go back and then we can go to page 66, and you'll notice that it's also up here in the address bar saying page 66. But we can just type in 66, press enter, and there's the article. And obviously you can zoom in as necessary. So I'm hoping that this new digital format allows me to actually read the articles that are in the magazines, and then I'll have to decide what I want to do with the magazines, if I want to keep those magazines or if I can get rid of them now. And of course, if I think back on it, the number of different computers that I've had since I started collecting woodworking magazines, it may be a safer bet just to hold on to the magazines than getting rid of them. However, I can move them over to the red pile instead of just leaving them in the unread pile. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Bye.